What's happening, everybody? Welcome to Secret Sessions, Issue 2. Back with my cohort in crime, my co-host, whatever y'all want to say, Nigel Lynch. I
What's
say
up?
Alan. Y'all call him Nigel because he wants y'all to know that British part of him. Try to say it with the accent, Nigel. Make it sound like he has one of those like manor homes from like Downton Abbey. Which do you guys get a lot of British programming down there, or is it because you guys aren't that far
Fair
from? Huh?
fair set. Remember, there's no real. The world is kind of open. There's no real limits to what we get. I watch a lot of South Korean dramas, and I watch a lot of Brazilian shows. Whatever Netflix has, and I think we actually have a pretty good Netflix because we have we have a lot of international shows. So I kind of see a lot of stuff from England, Canada, you name it. We got a lot of stuff.
Okay, so you guys mainly use like streaming, but like cable wise, like I don't know, like if you guys have a cable.
Streaming took over. Yeah, we had cable, but streaming kind of just streaming killed everything. Streaming just kind of killed everything. It doesn't make sense.
I mean that's
I have cable, but I don't watch it. I pay for it, but I don't watch it.
Yeah, I mean we have cable at my house, and it's mainly to watch streaming through cable because it's offered through Comcast. I don't know what cable providers you guys have down there, but in my area we have Comcast cable. That's NBC Universal. They own that, or Comcast owns NBC Universal. So we watch a lot of streaming services through cable. Honestly, I can see how streaming has taken over because I watch mostly everything through streaming. I don't use the DVR anymore because I don't feel the need to. And I prefer to bypass ads. I know advertising dollars keep TV running. It's a symbiotic relationship, but speaking of streaming, that's actually a good segue. Did you by chance see the Ironheart trailer?
Yeah, I saw the Ironheart trailer this week. I saw some buzz going on, so I guess kind of checked it out myself. I'd seen the other trailer before, and there isn't much new to it. I can't really judge it and say, well, is it going to be a good show? I guess I'll have to tune in and see. The only thing that is a little concerning is how long ago the show was produced, and we're now getting it. That's sometimes a little iffy. You know what I mean? When somebody sits on a show for so long. So that's the only thing I'd be concerned about.
I would say to that, I think the biggest question is, and somebody sent me, actually Herschel sent me a thing. It was some other people who are normally guests on BCL's podcast, not guests, but like frequent viewers. They were talking about like why Marvel waited so late to promote Ironheart. And the only answer I could really come up with in that discussion is like a cost-cutting measure. I mean, if you go back to 2021 and 22 and 23, I mean, you had like WandaVision on, yet you were still you had WandaVision on and you were advertising Falcon and the Winter Soldier. When Falcon and the Winter Soldier was on, you were advertising Moon Knight. When Moon Knight was on, you were advertising Miss Marvel, so it's and then I think it's a cost-cutting measure. I also think that they didn't want to cannibalize the attention. Like take for instance, like Falcon, not Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but Captain America: Brave New World. That got a heavy push. Thunderbolts barely got talked about because you didn't want to cannibalize the attention span, because one of the things that is talked about right now is superhero fatigue. So it could be that Marvel did not want to repeat that mistake. It's a different time now, and so you want people to focus on what's right in front of them instead of what's coming. If you think about it, they barely, and it's not one thing I don't want people to think is that it's a setup against the black girl. I mean, they barely advertised Daredevil Born Again, and also understand that Disney has several branches, right? So Star Wars may run a little bit differently than Marvel Studios, whereas Star Wars would have no problem advertising a show while they had another one concurrently running. But Marvel Studios is probably backed off from that.
Yeah.
And to your point about having the show and sitting so long on it, that's going to be a show that requires a lot of heavy, special effects. And while they were probably done with principal photography sometime last year, that show's probably been in post, especially with the budget that it has. It's probably been in post for 6 to 8 months.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so, I mean, it's a show that's going to have to be done with heavy special effects. Gone are the days of like the Lou Ferrigno. I can't think of the guy who played who was Bruce. It was Bill
Bixby.
somebody. Bill Bixby, yeah. Bill
Yeah.
Bixby and Lou Ferrigno. Gone are those days where 45 minutes of the show was Bill Bixby as Bruce Banner, and then you get 3
10
minutes
of Hulk.
if you even got 10 minutes of Hulk, and they reuse the same footage. I mean, same with that Spider-Man show. Like I remember seeing that on Sci-Fi, and it's like the guy who played Spider-Man was actually afraid of heights, and they reused a lot of the same footage. But yeah, gone are those days. I mean, with these projects as bold as they are, the budgets, like especially with all the criticism, like Marvel is doing what if Marvel had did this 3-4 years ago and took their time instead of rushing, they wouldn't be in this situation right now. So now they're taking their time and they're making sure that they put out good products. There was something I was going to say about that, but I honest to God cannot remember it right now. Budget. And something people probably need to be cognizant of is like when these shows first were announced, their budgets, a lot of people complain about why the shows were so short. Well, their budgets per episode were like $12 to $15 million.
Yeah.
I want people to understand just how much money Disney put into these shows. Like, I really wish more people would watch like Marvel Assembled, which on the DVD, that would be the behind the scenes stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you go back and you look at like WandaVision, if you go back and look at the episode, and Star Wars' version is called Galleria. That's their behind the scenes stuff, right? But Marvel Assembled, like go back and look at WandaVision, go back and look at Falcon and the Winter Soldier. They shot that 90% in Georgia. And and they show you how they use CGI to completely change the roads. And you saw how well that blended. And so there's a lot that goes into that, a lot of money. And to put in perspective, like the Marvel Netflix shows, like I said, these Disney Plus shows had a budget like something like $150 million, right? That's a cinematic budget. The Marvel Netflix shows had a seasonal budget of like 12 million. Like Luke Cage was shot on a $12 million budget, That's to break that down for 12 episodes, that's almost like $1 million an episode. Whereas the Disney Plus shows have 10 or 12 million per episode. And you can only imagine that a show like Ironheart, which is going to rely heavily on CGI, there's going to be practical effects like suits of armor, but a lot of that's going to be for walking around and whatnot, but like flying, action, anything involving intense action, that's all going to be CGI. So that's just something for.
Yeah, you can't get away from CGI in a superhero flick. No.
No.
It is what it is. I would say that of late, the Marvel shows and the cinematic movies have kind of stepped up a bit. I really enjoyed Thunderbolts. I really enjoyed Daredevil. So it felt as though they were kind of coming back around to what we were used to, let's say, a little bit before Endgame. Because the movies, especially like I watched Endgame this weekend, and it still has all the emotional beats. You still kind of get
Oh yeah,
excited.
yeah.
So that's the testament of a really good movie, and that's what we're kind of hoping to get back to, more so than a lot of the movies feel forgettable. You watch them and you don't want to watch them again, or you don't remember them. The last one that I kind of would say that fell into the category that felt like Marvel old school would have been like Guardians of the Galaxy 3. And that would have been because it was helmed by Gunn, and he kind of really did a really great job on the entire Guardians of the Galaxy series. So he was just kind of true to form, and that had a nice arc and a nice story, and that was really well done. So
Yeah, I think for me, I agree. Well, I mean, like you said, because James Gunn helmed all three, they never felt like different things. They all kept the same theme. I would say the Spider-Man trilogy also was consistently good in quality. And I agree with you. And like and in our private admin chats, me and you have both said the same thing, that like Thunderbolts felt like they were getting back true to form. But it's what I said. Like Captain America: Brave New World was unfairly tasked with doing stuff it should not have been tasked with doing. I mean, the reshoots. I mean, you can start to tell where it changed. But it was tasked with like resetting everything. I mean, I think they were hoping for a similar thing with like Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. But as I said to Herschel when I was on the BCL podcast, you guys can go check that out. That wasn't the movie that he wanted to make, but it was the movie that unfortunately he had to make. But yeah, I think that movie, the Captain America: Brave New World.
To me, looking back at it, right, with the Captain America: Brave New World, I would say that it was an okay movie, right? I wouldn't say it's a bad movie, but I think what kind of hurt the movie was, and this is what you kind of find sometimes with these people with the bad marketing, they should have never showed us Red Hulk.
I agree.
If you went into the theater and they had done it where they cut the trailer where we thought that Esposito was the bad guy, and we did some trickery, because they're not above telling lies in trailers. If they had done
they did it with Infinity War,
right? Yeah, they did it with Infinity War. They did it in Thunderbolts too, because the characters that were dead that they had in scenes that they weren't in. But if they had did that, I mean, you went into the theater and you saw Red Hulk, you would have freaked out. That would have been it. But because you saw Red Hulk in the trailer, and Red Hulk only occurs at the end of the movie, you expected it. There was no surprise. There was no. It was too formulaic. You kind of knew what was going to happen. There was nothing surprising about it, and I think that's what kind of made it feel okay. It's because there was nothing. There was nothing that was a shock or surprise. Even
there was no
surprise.
There was no stakes to a certain degree. I agree. Yeah. They should have kept Giancarlo Esposito. He was a sidewinder. They had 3 of the 5 members of the Serpent Society, so they should have really went with that. And I think that was their intent to do. But once again, the reshoots, I agree, should have kept it secret, like they did Daredevil in was it Spider-Man: Homecoming. I mean, it was rumored. I mean, even Tobey Maguire, it was like I wasn't there. I don't know. I wasn't there, and then he showed up, even though we kind of knew he would, but there was still the surprise. It's one thing when I know, but you won't confirm, and then I see it, and I'm like, oh hell yeah! It's a difference when you tell me, and I'm like,
hey, show, you show us, yeah.
You know,
it's a
like I'll give you another movie. I think they could have done something similar. The the Han Solo movie, that in Kathleen Kennedy's tenure, that was
Mhm.
one of the worst because there was no stakes involved. I know
No,
you can't kill Han Solo because I know when you kill him. So he can't die. And so for me, I wanted to see how he really becomes a rogue. I wanted to see more of the people that he meets in the beginning. Tandy Newton's character and I mean Woody Harrelson's character makes it to the end, but like some of those other supporting and ancillary characters, they were more interesting. I wanted to see him ride out with them and really learn what it means to be a rogue bandit. But to your point, they did keep Darth Maul a secret.
yeah,
And people were like, "Yeah, that's like one of the best parts of it," you know.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so they should have kept that a surprise. I think that's kind of universal. Um, but Thunderbolts did a good job. I mean, I guess, spoiler alert, this is because a lot of people were saying like this is the Thunderbolts, but this isn't the original Thunderbolts. Okay, now we know why there's an asterisk by the
Right.
title
And that was so
because
well done. That was one of the most funniest reveals of, like, because in the trailer you keep saying, when they play the part on it, said we can't call ourselves that, and you keep hearing about the Thunderbolts, and you know there's a Thunderbolts comic, and you keep saying, why is there asterisks? Is there a case where there's copyright issues before you're just thinking, why the
yeah,
asterisks? And then from the time the Louis Dreyfus's character reveals it, you kind of said, like, everybody thinks like, oh, that's why the
yeah.
asterisks. And that was just kind of,
If you
that was
knew,
kind of
yeah,
beautiful. Yeah, that was kind of
if you
beautiful.
knew, I loved
Yeah,
it when 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 they come out and she introduces them as spoiler alert, everybody. The movie's been out a while, and
yeah.
they've even changed. So forgive me, but they've even changed the billboards. She comes out, she
To,
says, "The new Avengers." My favorite part was when who is it? Yelena, she whispers in her ear and she's like, "We own you now." And I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "Kids, you're fucked. You can't do anything.
yeah,
We have you dead to rights." And so I thought that was a good reveal.
yeah, that
And
was
like
very,
we talked, I said that movie, like I agree with you 100%. It feels like old Marvel, but like I said, you're seeing the plan come to fruition, the realignment and resetting of priorities.
mm,
This is what Kevin Feige said he would do. Now, I also did see where uh, they're like the shows going forward will still be connected, but they won't be tied directly. It's more like kind of like what we used to ask for with the Marvel Netflix shows, and people just didn't understand that was a rights thing where they couldn't, mention certain things, yada yada yada. These shows will still reference these things, but they'll be allowed to tell their own narratives. And
mm.
so, okay, cool. But the Ironheart trailer, one thing I noticed, I'm curious as to what story you're drawing this from. Like, what is it based off of? And I think that's something uh they need to get back to.
Mm. So you prefer when they pull these stories from a comic book run, or do you prefer when they come up with a new story, but loosely kind of hint at an event or something that happened in the comic book, for enough for you to kind of say, hey, I know that kind of thing?
What's that whistling sound in the back? Is that you or
Mm,
me?
probably a fan, I think. I got a fan on. I can't
Okay.
hear it. Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear it. Either way, it'll be what it'll be. We apologize, folks, but everybody got to start somewhere. Yeah, it's from you because I heard it when your mic got unmuted. But um, I'm a mixture of both of those things. Um, and it really just all depends on how you go about doing it. Uh, like you take Miss Marvel, uh, I would say probably less than 10% of the Miss Marvel show actually drew from the source material. You know, you introduce things. There were certain things that were introduced I didn't mind, but I was like 10-15% of this is actually Miss Marvel, So like I said, it's about balance. You can tell an original story, but it is good to have enough that that character is still recognizable. Like not just Miss Marvel, but like the Harley Quinn movie, The Birds of Prey. That's another one where what was I gonna say? That's another one where it's like you got characters that are there, but they don't resemble their actual comic book counterparts. Like oh my goodness, she's orphan. Cassandra Cain. Cassandra
Right.
Cain is in that movie, and none of that was actually Cassandra Cain. Like Cassandra Cain can whoop Batman, and she has. So I don't want anybody coming at me. Go look it up. Like Lady Shiva is her mother and is considered one of the best hand-to-hand combatants, if not the best. And she's beaten both her and Batman. And Batman's no chump, But when you watch the Birds of Prey movie, I'm like, who the hell is this character? Huntress. Huntress the same way. I'm like, Huntress was pointless. Yeah, they went with her original, or they was that her well, I think that was her original origin. It may have been her second origin or whatever, but I think that was her original. But you look and I'm like, okay, she's pretty much useless, and this doesn't really resemble like Huntress. And so like, it's a balance. You can tell an original. Oh, who else? Renee Montoya. She was another one in that movie. It's like, okay, outside of being Hispanic, there's very little of this that actually resembles Renee Montoya. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
it's a
but I
balance thing.
think, yeah, but I also think a lot of it is due to the fact that, especially when you start to step away from the mainline characters, the average audience doesn't know who they are and they don't really care. So the studios and the people who they just kind of create something that's a little bit more palatable for the screen, because you know that comic books can be wacky, comic books can be crazy. If you had to go into some of these origins, a lot of them, that's why DC kind of reboots itself, because a lot of the original origins, they don't fly today in terms of the way how the heroes got the powers and that kind of stuff. So you will find that when they redo these characters or when they present them, there's always this question of how far do we go? Do we make them as close as possible to their comic book counterparts? Do we give them the same exact powers? Do we make them more realistic? Do we make them more edgy? What would this character be if it was grounded? And each studio does something different. Each series does something different. And it's interesting how Marvel was able to slowly spoon feed us. I don't know if you can remember when Iron Man first came out, it was relatively grounded. There was no, it was a man in a suit. It was basically science fiction. It felt kind of plausible within the world. And they slowly added Captain America, a man with a shield. Then they started to bring Thor in, and Thor didn't really deal with magic. It was science, and he wasn't a god. It was a different realm. And then they slowly, as you accepted it, he was a god. It is magic. And they slowly brought in the aliens. And to this point, there's not a character that they can't bring in that we're not going to just accept. But it starts to clash, and then it starts to take away. So when you watch something like Daredevil, which is in the same universe now, and it's grounded and it's real, but then you watch something like, say, WandaVision, which is magic and or say what's the last one that came out that's tied to WandaVision? The Agatha
Doctor
one.
Strange and the
Or
Agatha. Yeah, I didn't watch. I didn't finish. I
yeah,
watched
I
like
didn't.
part of the first episode.
Yeah, I didn't watch all of it. But when you see the tone of those two pictures, they don't feel as though they're in the same universe. Miss Marvel doesn't feel as though it's the same universe as Daredevil. which was then interesting to see that they tried to tie the two worlds together, because there is an episode in Daredevil where the father from Miss Marvel
Yeah,
does a
her dad
cameo.
shows up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
but
it was interesting to see. Well, yeah, it's kind of telling you this is the same universe, so we are in the same universe. No, but the tone and how it felt, it didn't feel that way.
well, I mean, Daredevil was always going to have a darker tone than Miss Marvel, and that's comics in general. I
Yeah,
mean, Daredevil in comics has a darker tone than, let's say, Power Pack, and they all do exist because they all cannot look and feel the same. That's not what I'm asking for. But like Daredevil still felt like uniquely Daredevil, and you saw elements of Daredevil that let you know that was Daredevil. Whereas Miss Marvel, like, they changed her origins because they had to, because they don't want to use the Inhumans. Was something else that you mentioned, like Thor. Thor still feels like Thor. Like, oh, okay, for us they're gods, but the reality is how they perceive things, they are not necessarily gods. They are a different realm of people, but to
yeah,
us they look like gods. So
true.
that's a way you bring, whereas in Marvel Comics they actually are gods. They do have their own realm, but they are a part of the pantheon of gods. you know
Yeah,
um but it's a way that you translate their origins in. So Birds of Prey didn't do that at all. Like, once again, Cassandra Cain is a thief. That's a total 180 from what she actually is. And so it's like you don't recognize any, like, pulse or any beats from the character, whereas Marvel figured out how to update things but still let you know that this is Iron Man. Like, for instance, Iron Man wasn't captured in Vietnam like he was in the comic. He didn't meet the Mandarin first, but his origin was still uniquely the same. He was in a cave. He built a suit of armor. That they hit the right beats, and they updated those things properly. And so,
yeah. But
uh,
I was more speaking towards the preparing the audience for the Marvel universe, so they didn't jump straight into the deep end with the craziness. They kind of ease us
yeah,
in. So by the time we were 10 years in, there
and
was
then Phase
nothing.
Three,
There was nothing that they threw at us that we wasn't willing to accept. So
yeah,
so they
and
kind of
that was
started with,
deep.
yeah. I
Yeah,
think
go ahead.
that's what I meant. So like the planning of the whole thing. So while I find with the DC films and the DC movies, because they're kind of scattered a bit, they didn't want to jump right in with it being this is the superhero stuff, or this is the origin from the comic book. They wanted to kind of say, well, it's almost like I don't know if you can remember the first Punisher movie with Dolph Lundgren, where
Mhm.
they tried to separate themselves as far as possible from the comic book because they just didn't think the audience would accept it. And I think that's where some of those other DC movies, they were kind of doing that kind of stuff with some of the more obscure characters. And they keep pulling a lot of obscure characters too, trying to see if they could kind of copy that Guardians of the Galaxy kind of thing, where do some obscure character and let's see if it can strike lightning and we can write on that success. But so it just didn't work.
No, I mean, DC's biggest problem. So, like, that original Punisher movie probably didn't feel like a Marvel movie in totality, kind of like Howard the Duck, because it's about what they had the rights to do. Whereas DC didn't really have that problem. DC's problem was they rushed. They tried
Mhm.
to do in 5 years what, like, Marvel, by the time they did Man of Steel, Marvel had been making superhero movies, or Marvel Studios had been making superhero movies for 5 or 6 years. They tried to catch up when people said DC should just follow the Marvel formula, which it looks like that's kind of what they're going to do now.
Mhm.
It was, and that's why, like you said, like, by the time you got the first Avengers movie, There wasn't a character that showed up in there that you had not already seen. Whereas DC did the Justice League, and Ray Fisher, who played Cyborg, said that my part was bigger, my part was more fleshed out. Lo and behold, you see the Snyder cut, his part was more fleshed out. His origin was, explained. You know, other characters, like you got Flash in the Justice League before Flash had a solo movie. You know what I mean? You had Aquaman in this movie before Aquaman had a solo movie. Whereas Marvel, everybody that showed up in the Avengers had at least one solo movie or appeared in somebody's solo film,
Yeah.
And so they did a better job laying the groundwork, but also, once again, even updating origins so that, okay, what made this character? Okay, Thor being cast out, cool. Instead of making him, a lame person, like his hammer is there, he sees it, he's just not worthy yet to pick it up. Because like that part would not have translated, transforming into Donald Blake and, only being able to be Thor as long as he held the hammer.
Yeah.
Those things just wouldn't translate. But they looked at the things that could be brought over and they did that. Whereas once again, DC they rushed, they introduced characters, they cluttered things up, they changed people, and it looks like now with James Gunn at the helm, you're probably going to see better stewardship. While on DC, going back to the thing that got sent to me, um, one of the things that those gentlemen talked about was why drop the trailer the same day as Superman?
Right.
Honestly, I think it was 50-50 because Superman is a bigger brand than Ironheart for sure. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
But I think there's more. I think as far as like faith, it's about 50-50, I think, personally. Because there are people that are going to question, James Gunn's vision for Superman. And I think it's the same with Ironheart. Ironheart's just a lesser known character. I personally think, once again, Black Panther Wakanda Forever, I don't think is the movie that Ryan Coogler wanted to make the way that he really wanted to make it. That we know for sure because the Thunderbolts were supposed to be introduced in that movie. Dr. Doom, what we understand now, he was supposed to be introduced in that movie. I mean, I think Ironheart probably should have been introduced with some tie to like Iron Man, which is what she needed to begin with. So, but either way, I plan on watching and we see what they do.
Yeah.
Hopefully it
I'll
does
give it a
well.
watch. I'll give it a watch. The way how I kind of go naturally, if I watch an episode and it's good, it will bring me back. If I watch an episode and I don't like it, what usually happens is I will forget about it. I will be busy and then I would not remember. But I think there's going to be a lot of buzz. So I think that's going to cause me to want to check it out for myself because I think it's going to be very polarizing. So I'm going to want to be able to make a judgment for myself if it was good, bad, in between. So I may end up watching it because of that.
Yeah, and I'm already in my head ignoring people. Like if you tell me that this is DEI Iron Man, I immediately ignore your whole opinion because your voice does not matter because that's not what it is. If you knew anything about this comic or about this character, you wouldn't think that. So those opinions I'm leaving out. Now, what I did learn in that video that was sent to me was they're going to drop 3 episodes.
Okay.
They're going to drop 3. So you'll get I think they're going to hope that word of mouth picks up for the lack of promotion. So you'll be able to know. I mean, I imagine if they're doing 3 episodes a week, I don't know if it's just a 3 episode drop. I didn't hear anything about them dropping it at 3 episodes, but sounds plausible. Sounds. I wonder, are they going to do 9 episodes or 12. I honestly have not looked because I will tell the God's honest truth. I forgot about the whole series until people started asking me about it,
Yeah, I
just
forgot about it too. I
yeah.
actually
I
forgot.
mean,
I forgot.
yeah. And I want, anybody watching, it's not because I don't like Riri Williams. I do. I actually have 3 complete sets of her first appearance, Invincible Iron Man 7 and 9, and I have a complete set of the second print, and I finally earlier this year got a hold of both variants, the one with Mary Jane on the front, and then the variant for issue number 9, which during the COVID bubble, that book had skyrocketed, the Apocalypse variant. So I do own several copies. Even of her solo series, I own several copies of the first issue and read it. So I am excited for the character, but I think I'm going to look to see like how much of the source material did you put into this story, because once again, Miss Marvel, so little of that was her actual source material. I understood not doing the Inhumans connection because they wanted to distance themselves from the Inhumans. But there were still other things that I was looking for that I think would have made Miss Marvel fun, because Miss Marvel's original title is quirky. Like, she's the girl from Jersey. And, when she looks over at New York, they got all the name brand heroes, all the top tier villains and whatnot. And she's in Jersey. They got, like, I was waiting. I was like, okay, where are the Canadian ninjas? Because they are a thing. They're like the tracksuit bros from the tracksuit mafia that Hawkeye had to face. That's
Right.
like her version of that. And so I was like, where are those things? Like, there were a lot of things from her series that were easily translatable to this book. Not this book, but this show. We didn't
Series,
see.
yeah.
Edison is another thing. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they didn't add any of that stuff. Same with Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. They literally could have went issue for issue. It was already drawn in a cartoon style, but the show that we got didn't resemble the book. The book would have been so easily translatable, especially since Moon Girl's series was animated. And for the record, I own several copies of Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur #1. I think I own 3 of the regular, 1 second print, and the hip hop variant. So, I mean, and I own, I think, all but 1 issue.
So,
So I
question. I have
did,
a question.
yeah,
So, question for you. So,
yeah.
you are you are the type of fan that doesn't mind if you have a comic book and then they bring out let's say they did an animated series, and then the animated series is the exact beat for beat as the comic book. Because I prefer something new, um, because I could end up tuning out if I know exactly what's going to happen. It wouldn't hold my interest.
I don't mind it. Like I said, it's about how you translate it. I mean, if you were a fan of the 90s X-Men series, I mean, when I was watching, I didn't know anything about the X-Men at that time. So everything I got was from the show. But if you were a fan of the comic, then yeah, you were excited to see how the Dark Phoenix saga was translated to animation, or to that show. So yeah, I have no problem with it, because it's about how you interpret that thing, how you translate it over. I mean, you're not going to completely do a 1-for-1. I mean, look at the Spider-Man show. There's a lot of things like how they did
You mean the new one? The new one they did?
yeah,
The
yeah,
new
like
yeah,
how they
that's a totally different story. And I found out I have to go back and probably watch the last few episodes, but I actually found that pretty interesting. And I
well,
think
no, it is a unique story. What I was saying is,
yeah,
like, there's still like certain things that make each character who they are, and it was interesting to see how they incorporated those things. So,
mm,
yeah, so it's like I said, it's all about how you incorporate it and how you translate it. I mean, it's the same like with with live action, like a lot of people want to see certain costumes, but it's like those costumes don't necessarily translate to real life. That used to be it, but now we kind of see, like you look at like Wanda's. There's still enough of Wanda's, and there's enough inspiration in the MCU Wanda's visual that like you're
Right.
satisfied with it, because it's like, okay, you can't do quite the corset thing that she
Yeah.
originally had, though they did do that in the show, but it was more like a Halloween costume. But they did look at it and it did directly inspire her MCU look. So yeah,
Yeah.
I can do that. I'm like, okay, cool. That I understand that, you know what I'm saying? And so like I said, it's all about interpretation. And
Yep.
so
Yep.
there's a good and a bad way to do it. Birds of Prey, bad way. But Marvel, for the most part, has done a fairly decent job of translating and interpreting these costumes for a modern era, and especially for a cinematic or like streaming show era, you know. So, and then just some things are easier, like uh Nick Fury. His outfit is, that's easy to do in any era. You don't really have to do much touch up there. But like
Yeah.
Captain America's suit, you notice he didn't have any wings on the boots, you know, and he's had 3 different costumes, but you see like the inspiration and evolution, you know.
Yeah.
Actually, I think
Yeah.
he did have it once when they had him doing like promotional tour in
It wasn't
Captain
the
America.
wings on the. It wasn't the wings on the boots. It was wings on the ears.
Yeah. There you go. The
The
wings on the ears.
wings
I
on the
think they
ears.
did that when they had him
Yeah,
doing
right.
like the little
The
USO
USA,
tour.
sure,
The-
yeah. In the beginning, out
yeah,
of the traditional
yeah.
floppy boots, kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's how you get that original costume. But then from there, you see the more inspired version.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, I do dislike. Um, Sometimes it's like 50-50. I hate when they take the character like Harley Quinn, and then you turn around and in the comic you make Harley Quinn look more like the movie when it should be the source material inspiring the film. And then and like with Harley, it became every appearance of her, you know, was I can't think
The
of
the fishnet
this
style with
yeah,
the
the Suicide Squad Harley, the
yeah.
I can't think of the woman who plays her. I can see the face, but I can't think of her name
Marco
right now.
Robbie.
Yeah,
Margot
Margot
Robbie.
Robbie. Yeah, the
Mm,
Margot Robbie version of her. You
yeah.
know, that's not the same as like bringing Phil Coulson from the Avengers, which was a completely original character for the cinematic, into the Marvel universe. That's different, you know. But this, you made Harley, you know, in all visual media and all motion media, the Suicide Squad version. And it's like there's nothing wrong with her original look, and
Yeah.
she did don that one time, and it was like great. You could continue to do that, you know. So, but other characters like Valkyrie. They introduced the MCU version of Valkyrie into the Marvel comic landscape several years ago. Um, they've tried to make Cap a little bit more like, well, almost all of those characters more like their MCU counterparts. I mean, we read I was Ironheart Bad Chemistry, and what was one of the things I said? I was like, oh, this feels like Dominique Thorne, the
Mm,
actress who plays Riri in Ironheart. It feels like her.
mm.
That seems like the style that it's written in. Because if you go and you read Invincible Iron Man, if you read, I don't. It didn't become. Was Ironheart her
No,
first solo?
it was
No, it
Iron
wasn't.
Man. It
Yeah,
was Iron Man.
she
She
had
was took over Martin.
her. Yeah, she was Iron Man for her first solo. She that was her series, and then in Ironheart, it doesn't feel like that. But Ironheart, the Bad Chemistry book feels like Dominique Thorne. And
Mm.
who wrote that? Was it Greg Burnham that wrote that?
Which one? The first one?
No, the Bad Chemistry book that we read.
John Jennings.
John Jennings, yeah, and that was
Yeah.
something that I kind of asked him, and I think he kind of confirmed that, like, yeah, it's tie, it's not direct tie-in material, but it's available merchandise to coincide with the show, you know. So, and unfortunately, we're probably going to see the slow modification of Riri in the comics becoming whatever, or a version of what Riri is in the show. But just looking at the trailer and everything, I'm curious as to what they bring over. I hope they draw a little bit more from the source material, or at least try to adapt. That's the word I've been looking for. I've been struggling with that. Adapt certain notes from who she actually is into the MCU instead of the other way around. But moving on from there, there was something else I wanted us to talk about.
I think you was talking about your guest appearance on the BCL show this week.
Oh yeah, what did you think of that? I mean, I personally had a blast. I thought it was fun. It was just like what we're doing now, just talking comics. I mean, talk Storm. I am a Storm fan, but I do start to see where some people may have a bit of fanaticism with Storm.
Right.
I don't have an issue with Storm becoming a god, but with all characters, you need a villain. Something that Monty brought up, and I didn't even think about it during that podcast episode, was like her main villain is Shadow King. But being a member of the X-Men, like your villain becomes our villain. You know what I mean? Even Wolverine, for as popular as he is, like most of his villains end up becoming X-Men problems.
Sabretooth, guy with the whip hands. I can't remember his name.
Omega Red. Yeah. All of these guys, all your villains become our villains. It's like, what do they say? Like for married folks, like women be like, my money is my money and your money is my money. My villain is my villain and your villains are my villain too. And so, but no, I had a blast, man. That was fun. I would love to have him, on this show, and just foster that sense of community, man. But that was really great. But I start to see that point of view more. It's like, I don't hate Storm. I just hate the people, like almost you almost romanticize her. It's like, oh, well, she's a god, this, and she's this and that. And I'm like, okay, well, what is that all going to lead to? I think I've said in our personal chat, and this was something I kind of should have thought about in that moment, was like, with Storm being a god, I would love it. I'll take your thoughts on this. How would you feel, before I get into what I think, how would you feel about Storm having a Marvel Max series if they brought it back?
I would actually probably read it. What I like about the limited run series, especially Max, especially if it can be something divorced from the regular universe, and it gives the creative team space to kind of breathe, go off the rails, that they can do certain things. I would actually enjoy it. So I actually prefer Marvel Max and some of those other imprints that they had back in the early 2000s, that kind of stuff. So I wouldn't mind seeing Storm in a Max series if they had something like a Max series or a Marvel Knight series or something like that. Yeah, I'd enjoy it.
I remember posting in BCL. I actually got called a misogynist for this, which I don't even understand how. Like, just asking, like, for some of these female characters, like, would it be more advantageous for them to have a Marvel Max series? For the very reasons, like you said, because in a Marvel Max series, you can cut loose. It's not just about the swear words and the nudity and sex, but it's like being able to fully cut loose, not necessarily be totally divorced from main continuity. Like Marvel Max Punisher.
Thor had a Max series.
Yeah, you reminded me of that. I didn't realize that was the one where he actually lost his arm.
You guys' arms broken or something. So it just
is that the one where it gets cut off, or did he just get severely beaten?
He got severely beaten, and his two wrists. He got his wrist broken, and it was like a really. It was a wrist, as you said, and it wasn't about nudity and swearing. It was just a little bit more graphic. It was a little bit, you got to
Yeah.
see a different type of story. I'm a big fan of Punisher Max. Punisher Max is my favorite Marvel series, and that is its own universe, and
Mhm.
it has a different feel. And you know the amount of freedom that the person has, you just kind of accept it. It has very few Marvel characters in it. I think
Mhm.
it only has in Nick Fury was in it,
Mhm.
and I think yeah, Nick Fury was in it, and then later on they kind of brought Kingpin and Bullseye into a certain run because they were the more grounded characters. So they brought Kingpin, Bullseye, and Elektra, but she wasn't the Elektra with the powers. She was just a ninja kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
But and a lot of that had to deal with Garth Ennis. Garth Ennis is the same guy who created The Boys. If you know anything about Garth Ennis, atheist, he doesn't like superheroes.
like this,
Um
you
pre-
can tell.
preacher. Oh yeah, he has said it. You know,
Yeah, I can tell.
for him, he did an interview for like Newsarama years ago, and I read it,
Mhm.
and it was during the time of The Boys, and he was talking about why he created it, and he's like, for him, like, and this is me paraphrasing, so people go back and look at and look up what he actually said. But I mean, I'm trying to remember his best. This is 20 years ago, okay? So
Mhm.
don't crucify me. But he was like, for him, like the type of guys he idolized were real people. These like World War II guys, like these were fighting men and whatnot. And so Garth Ennis is The Boys. That's Preacher, the Pro. You ever get hit? Read the
Yeah,
Pro, Alan. That was yeah,
I read the pro, I
the
read the pro.
Pro. Um,
Cross. I don't know if you ever read Cross.
I didn't read Crow. I
Is
didn't read the Pro though.
Cross is not for the Cross is not for the
Faint of
weak at
heart.
heart. It's
No.
not. It's not for the faint at
And
heart. Cross is.
that's why his Punisher is like that. Like he chose a grounded hero. And you know, that was during a time when Marvel would let you. And they did try to let people be creative. You know, it seemed like they had a little bit more freedom there. But like I said, if you've been in this a while, you kind of see the MCUification of a lot of characters. Who else? But oh yeah, back to the train of thought. No, I would love to see like Misty Knight in a Marvel Max series. Really let her get into that detective, that law enforcement side, and that would be one instance where like the MCU version would actually the MCU version isn't much different from the real version. Just who
Yeah.
she gets the bionic arm from, because when she got it, they couldn't mention Tony Stark. Tony Stark is how she actually gets the arm. But I would love to
Mhm.
see. I would love to instead of in Dare in I forget which one is it. It's either Daredevil or Defenders, one of them two. She gets it from
Yeah.
Rand Corp. Yeah,
Right.
but I would love to see her where you could just really get into the shit. But back to Storm, what I told what I said in our our little group meetings, and this is like what, 6 months ago now. Crazy, huh? Um, I would love to see Storm in a Marvel Max series where she could cut loose, but really get into what it means to be a god. Like really go into where like somebody takes her and is like, what type of god do you want to be? You know,
Mhm.
I know for the black male fans, it's like, it's the highest level of esteem for a black woman. But as a comic book fan, I'm like, okay, what besides just a weather, like what type of god would she become? Like, is she, like a Dionysian god where it's wine and partying and debauchery? You could have two issues that show her what that really is. Like I guess where like she comes in with the idea of what type of god she wants to be versus the reality of what it means to be a god. Oh my god, I'm trying to think of the series. I think it was a Jean Grey series where they kind of did something like that, where they were talking about the Phoenix being like a god,
Mhm.
and just how being like one of the gods of the oh my goodness, the Shi'ar, like being
Mhm.
like like the little sister god of one of the Shi'ar, and just she sees how these beings are. I would like Storm to have a series like that. Like I said, maybe 2 issues where she sees the different like Dionysian type of gods, and then maybe 2 issues where she sees, how gods function that deal with life and death, and the underworld, and maybe 2 issues where she deals with gods of war. She has the god level power. Yes, we know that controls weather, but it's all in how she uses it. Like, what is that? In military terms, it would be MOS, which would be the job. I'm trying to think of like a video game terminology, like maybe like affiliation or class type of thing.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Something so that everybody could understand where I'm coming from. Like, where do you want to fit in? Are you trying to be like the head of a pantheon? And like, okay, if you want to take your weather powers to that level, are you willing? Do you understand what it means to be the head of a pantheon, to oversee these type of individuals and these personalities? Which, for those of y'all who wonder like if that could work, she's been an X-Men team leader, people with power, so that translates to that type of a story. And so
how are you liking the run, this new run so far?
I got asked that, and I have been purchasing it. I haven't been able to read it. I mean, much like you, busy. I've actually read, for anybody wondering, I've read more independent books. Not that I hate Marvel and DC, but for the group, I've read more independent books. As far as like the big two, the one that I've read recently was Absolute Green Lantern. You can check out my reviews along with any of Alan's reviews on the Secret Society of Black Comics. Guess we got to throw that promo out there. You can check out our reviews there. But as far as Storm, I've been actively buying because I've been really drawn to the covers. But as far as reading the story, I haven't read it yet, so I can't judge it. But from what people have told me, she's a god now. And so, like I said, I would love to see a series where she could really get into what that is, because if you tell the story of gods, once again, some of them, it's not for the faint of heart. Some of them, the visuals are not, I don't want to say pretty, but you know what I mean? Kind of like when we mentioned in the last episode, like if you really look at like the fairy tales, and mind you, and those were meant for kids, like the Little Mermaid. She turns into foam at the end. She dies. Little Red Riding Hood, the huntsman cuts her out of the wolf's stomach. Like, and that was completely normal. So, if you really look at like the story of the gods and what they do, I would love to see Storm and how she reacts to that.
What's interesting too, right? Which I kind of find a little different, especially I find it with the indie comic books, a lot of modern books, when they throw around someone being a god. To me, it's just my opinion, you can't be a god unless you're being worshipped. So she would have to have followers who worships her as a god, if you understand what I'm saying. She would have to have a cult personality kind of thing. She needs to have people that are just fanatics behind her if you're going to go to that god status. Because that's the crux of being a god. Even I'm a fan of Greek mythology, so everyone that they mentioned in Greek mythology that was a god, even some of the lesser gods, they had people who believed in them and prayed to them for help. Some didn't have temples, but somebody did believe in them to some aspect to help them for something. So that's the aspect of it. But we kind of throw around this thing about people being gods in comic books, and somebody say, my character's the god of this and this. But a part of being a god is praise and having followers. That's a part of it. I'm doing a book, and I have a character in it who is worshipped as a god. He's not a god, but he's seen as a god. But a part of it that kind of defines him to be a god is that people worship him and believe in him. So that's an aspect of it, that if she goes to that god tier level, I think she needs to have followers that believe in her.
You either need to have people that pray to you or fear you. Now, this book you're working on, is we gonna get to preview that anytime soon, or?
Not really. I just kind of in the note stage, kind of writing. I've started about writing again. I haven't written anything in a while. I'm looking to try to finish up some stuff with White
Yeah,
so I kind of ending off a series. So
yeah,
sometimes you just
I'm the same way.
catch a flow. I just kind of
Yeah,
running with it. But the way how a production of a book goes, there's a there's a lot of upfront planning and writing, and then when you because I prefer where I iron out as much stuff before I start to put pen to paper in terms of artwork, because I don't want to
yeah.
have to change artwork and change the
Yeah, you want
story
to
and that
do
stuff.
like what they do with film, and well, you want to have like your kind of like a show running guide, and you want to have your treatment, which a treatment is essentially like a script with no dialogue. Like you tell your story with no dialogue. And that's something that I'm working on. Like I teased it in our little group, and I'll tell you the name of it when we log off, because I'm just like that. It's something I've been kind of working on. I haven't written on it in a couple of weeks, but being in the group inspired me to go back through, and it's just one of
Yeah,
those things that's been kind of stuck in my head. But back to like Storm being a god. Like, no, I agree. Uh, we do toss around these terms, and it's more so like people are my character's a god for classification with power scaling, but not what
yeah,
does it mean to really be a god.
yeah,
And that's what I
correct.
want for the people who watch it this episode. That's what I want you to think about, is like not just about power scaling, because she's already what they call what I think they Jonathan Hickman did a classification. I can't think if it's ELE, like an extinction level event mutant, but like I believe she's at that top tier level. Her, Magneto, yeah, I think that is what they call them. And I could be wrong. Somebody, when you watch this, feel
Yeah.
free to message me and remind me. But I believe that is the classification
Mm.
for mutants. It's
If
like
not,
you're an
if not, if not, it's
extinction
Omega
level.
level. I think it's true.
There you
I think
go.
it has
That's it.
Omega level.
There you go. That's the term,
Yeah.
omega level. I
Mm.
wanted to say that there's a level higher than that, but no, Storm is classified as an omega level mutant. Same with Magneto. Same with Polaris. There's actually some other
That's
people that
smart.
got classified as they got classified as omega level just because of what their powers are capable of. And some
Yeah.
people it made sense, like Magneto. Like if y'all don't understand just how much of a threat Magneto is, I don't know what to tell you. You need to go look up how he saved Kitty Pryde. And mind you, Kitty Pryde was trapped in a I can't remember the size of the damn bullet, but it was big enough to destroy a planet. And Magneto pulled her ass back. She was on the other side of the galaxy. And he
Mm.
pulled her back. Mind you, I think Kitty Pryde is Omega level because that entire time she was trapped in that bullet, she had to stay intangible. This
Mm.
is where you guys start getting into physics. Like two objects cannot occupy the same point
There's
at the
space. Yeah.
same time. You can't do that. You know, that's on a molecular level. So she had to stay intangible in this thing. And Magneto, by the way, not only did she have to be intangible, the damn thing that she was in had to be intangible too. So like she held that, and he managed to. No, I don't think the bullet had to be intangible. I think she just had to be. No, she had to be intangible because it kept the bullet from hitting and hurting other things.
Mm.
Um, and Magneto managed to pull her back, so he's redonkulously powerful. And then you also just have to study like how magnetic fields really work and how they really do extend ad infinitum. Like they extend to infinity. They just get weaker and weaker and weaker. But we ain't
That's
gonna
a
go down
whole
there.
nother.
But
Yeah, it's a whole nother
yeah,
thing.
yeah, we're gonna have to say that for like the next arc. um, but no, yeah, man. So I think we're on the same wavelength. Like I would love to see a Marvel Max series, and then not just see where but indulge, because you need a feel for that. Like have like some Dionysian god, like have her participate, you know, in it. And so she's like, okay, do I like this? And just really get into that mental state, like, okay, I like this, but I didn't like that, you know. Um, I loved the touch and the feel of these people, but I didn't like being dipped in chocolate, you know what I'm saying, or something like that. Because you know how Dionysian, party, like he was it in Futurama, like Hitobot, he's like Shambi, and they just pour like grape wine over him, that type of stuff. And then have her go out with like the gods of war, and where like we know that she's been Stormcaster, but as Storm. Well, that was an alternate universe version, but like Aurora Monroe, have her actually go out, be a part of a war where she actually had to kill, like, maybe like put like some little armband on her, and it's like, okay, for this week, which would be these 2 issues, she has to be a god of war. So she has to move in that vein, to be on the battlefield, to look your enemy in the eyes and kill. For each different type of god, like a goddess of harvest, and if you're wondering, like, well, what weapon would she have? Well, she would have to figure out how to make her powers work within that, but we don't want to plan it all, but like you said, and that just adds on to what you were saying, like, to be a god, you need to be worshipped or feared. But I think with like Thor, the movie, the way they're getting around it now, and I think they did this in Marvel also a few years ago, way before, was that because they are essentially another realm, and we perceive them, a certain way, that they are gods, so it's kind of like dual classification type of thing, or like both of those things apply, so that depending on the writer, you could really delve into the god thing or delve into like these are beings from another realm, and we just perceive them as gods, and it works either way. But no, but just moving on to the rest of that conversation. I mean, obviously we talked about T'Challa. I still like Black Panther, but man, even that, like, there's what people think he can do, and then there's what he can actually do. And I had people tell me, well, he fought the first firmament with the help of Bast. Yeah, think back to what you just typed out. With the help of a god, T'Challa did not wake up and fight the first physical embodiment of a whole nother universe, the first universe. He did that with the help of a deity, and he did not do it by himself. He had the ultimates. You know what I'm saying? Like, but either way, it was fun to have those talks, or to have that type of conversation, just like this one, man. Moving on. You want to go ahead and get into the main event, the main draw, the fight card, Diary of Stray Dogs 2?
Oh, we can talk a little bit about that, yeah.
All right.
So
hold on, man. Come on through. Come on through. Y'all don't mind the background. That's just my sister. That's my lovely sister. Hey, I'm filming in a house, baby. People live here. Things happen.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and add that to the stage. Oh, I love how it just went there. Went there.
Yeah, so this is the follow-up for the first book in the series. This is also a one-shot series, a one-shot comic, meaning that it's a full story, beginning to end. You don't have to read book 1, but if you do, it kind of fills you in a little bit with the background of the characters. And this one, I think, is about 60-something pages. So it's a very meaty kind of book. As I started to produce this book, the idea was, instead of breaking it up into 3 stories or 3 parts and releasing it over 3 years, just kind of get it all done and knock it out one time. Because one of the downsides sometimes of an indie creator is the diminishing returns, in terms of sometimes you will put out a book, and then when you put out the next book, you don't get as much followers, and it keeps dropping all the time. So one of the ways to kind of add more value for money would be to put out bigger books. So that's kind of what I went with.
Yeah, I think that's something that we've talked about, and like I think it's very much so possible to do it this way. And just as I've gone along and I've learned, and I've been with you and Imani and Obasi, and we've discussed things, and then just learning more about some of the behind the scene things with indies, and just seeing how the Kickstarter market is going, which A question for you, just something to think about. Maybe
Mhm.
we'll talk about it next time. Is just what do you think needs to happen? Oh, I knew there was another topic. Ah, it was about the big two failing, but we can say that for another day. Um, like what do you think needs to happen to like get an indie off of like the Kickstarter support, or is that something that you don't really see happening? Like, and what I mean by that is I'm not knocking Kickstarter. I don't want anybody to think I'm knocking Kickstarter. What I'm saying is be successful enough with it so that you could be self-sufficient. You know, I mean, I get raise money and might as well raise money, let people support, help cover the cost, but like get to the point where you are a self-sufficient publishing house, or that issue is self-sufficient enough to where you can go ahead and publish the next issue without a Kickstarter. That way you don't have to worry about it failing, you know, which is we've seen, and we're not knocking any indies, but we've seen several Kickstarters fail. And it seems like a lot of indie companies, that is like their revenue stream, their lifeblood. And I'm just curious as to like,
Okay,
you know, as a
so
fan, yeah.
from I'll tell you from the inside, I kind of from someone who is looking on it from the outside, it does look as though we are kind of with being supported by Kickstarter. But the truth of the matter is, most indie comic books, Kickstarter is just another marketing stream or a way to sell books.
Hmm.
Because unless you make a significant amount of money, you will not recoup the amount of funds that you need to produce the book. But let's say about 10 years ago, what people used to do, and this is when Kickstarter was a different beast, people would pitch a book. They wouldn't draw a single page. They'll just come with the idea, maybe some concept art, and sell you on the story with some imagery, a few lines
Hmm.
of text, and that was you going to Kickstarter to get a book funded. Meaning that if it didn't reach the goal, you wasn't going to start a book. And then it also meant sometimes if you did reach the goal and you didn't manage your money properly, the book would never be made. We've kind of moved away from that. The majority of the books that you see being kicked around on Kickstarter, they are 90 to 95, 99% finished. What Kickstarter does is kind of jumpstart you into sales of the book, especially if you're now starting. But if you're a more established creator, it would be, if you have a big fan base, it will actually, you can recoup some funds and it will pay for the print costs. So different people have different uses for it. So most of the time, this book was finished, but what I used the Kickstarter to do was print the book. So by offering the book for sale on Kickstarter and having more people with eyes on, it has an international market. People, you kind of, people come and pitch in, and you're a part of a community that people go to looking for new comics and that kind of stuff. You're more likely to be seen than to try to sell something on your own website. And if you're successful and you've marketed and planned your Kickstarter correctly, it means you'll be able to fulfill the pledges and have enough money to print some books afterwards. And that's where the other part of it comes into play, where you said where you have to be sustainable. And that sustainability would be you having a website and selling stuff on your website, going to conventions, and maybe collaborating with other creators to find ways how to market and cross promote books. So it's not like creators are going to live and die by Kickstarter, but it's something that is very, very, very helpful. I've seen creators try to pivot and go on other platforms. I've seen creators try to just launch from their website, but the eyes and the traffic that you get on Kickstarter, it's not worth it not trying it out. You know what I mean? So that's the thing. So I don't see the need for creators to kind of try to get off of it, unless you have an issue with the actual management, or if they've been messing with your funds, or if your book has been banned or something like that. If you're producing a good book and you're building a fan base and you're building that community, it's a great place to be.
Okay. So initially, so you said about 10, 15 years ago, kind of sounds like 10, 15 years ago, it was like you said, like kind of like what they do with the movies. You know, you sit with the some exec and you pitch the idea, then you get the funds and you actually go and make the movie. Whereas now, now it's like I'm asking you guys to fund, and I have proof of concept. You know, I have a finished book. I have X amount of pages done, so that you
sometimes
kind of like what dudes do when they talking to girls, like, you know, come be on the team, baby. Let me show you the vision. And I actually, you know, you know what I mean? And let me show you this vision so you can understand what it means to be with a player like me. You know what I'm saying? Something like that. I don't know how y'all do it.
So I would sometimes see a comic book I like on Kickstarter, and I would reach out to the creator and I would ask, how far is the book? Is the book done? Is the book, you know, what they're doing? Because you will still get books that are delayed because the creator didn't plan properly, or the book isn't finished. So then you have to kind of wait a year for them to finish the book, or there's tons of books that never get finished. I've heard horror stories of people who back campaigns and the campaigns have never been fulfilled. So, but most people know they do not start a campaign without knowing that the book is 90 to 99% done. And so you know, once you follow a creator and you know that they have a good track record and everything is going well, you will be more inclined to back them. So something you kind of mentioned there, where you said somebody Kickstarters with the independence will fail. Sometimes I think, you know, we talk about superhero fatigue. Sometimes there's a bit of Kickstarter fatigue in terms of the community. So one of the downsides of the indie community, as let's say the indie Facebook community, Instagram community, and being a part of the community, there's only so many books people can back. So if you have people backing each other and your lifeblood is that the same creators that are looking to back you, you can find an issue where they may come out for that first book, or they may come out to help push you over a certain hurdle, but they can't always do it, and you can't expect them to do it. So, you know, it's almost like you have a flea market, but the only people you sell to are the other vendors at the flea market, and the only people who buy from you is the other vendors at the flea market. Really, what we need to have is customers from the outside. We need fans, and that's one of the reasons I kind of got with you guys about the whole reviewing and promoting and stuff, because we need more spaces where people can Google a book if they're interested in a book and find information on the book. We need more spaces where people talk about, you see how we talk about Storm, and we talk about Thunderbolts, or we thought about Thunderbolts. There's no space like that for the indie community. We need to talk about, and not just only some people getting their books highlighted. So you will find there's certain books that get more exposure, and it's not necessarily that the books that get more exposure are the better books. It's just that the people who get more exposure sometimes may have better marketing, or they talk a good game. So, but we need more spaces where people can learn more about the indie books, and that's kind of the mission that you're going on. So when I see some Kickstarter fail, it's because either the fan base isn't there, or they've come back to milk the exact same fan base 2 months later, after that same fan base just bought a book from them. Maybe not because they wanted to, but because they just wanted to support them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So so that's it.
All righty. I do have like some thoughts, but real quick before we move forward, just and we're not going to do this with every episode, but if you would remind people, because people can, I've said it in our admin chats, you can say whatever you want about me. I'm a fan. I've been a fan of comics for 25 years, so I've been reading for a little over half my life. So you say what you want about me, but I'm a fan of this hobby. I am passionate about it. I mean, if you watched my conversation with Herschel, I had books sitting by my feet. You know what I'm saying? A bunch of Marvel and DC books, So I've been a fan of the hobby, but I want you to remind the people what your experience level is and how long you've been in the comic book scene as a producer.
So I've been doing this on various levels for, let's say, about the last 18 years. And I would have seen a lot of when I first started, Kickstarter wasn't the same Kickstarter as it is now. So it was that phase when people went with just the proof of concept. I know people who just show proof of concept. It was like a infinite money glitch. Just put a proof of concept. People give you the money, and you don't have to do shit.
People wanted to be people wanted to be on the ground floor, like you said. Infinite money glitch is like, once again, let me sell you on the vision. Except back then, that was it. The vision was
just the vision. That was
it. That was it.
Nowadays,
the vision. The vision is I can actually put it in your hand. I think I showed this last week, but I'll show it again this week for the people. This is the vision.
Yeah.
Also, just so y'all know, I think I said it last time, I am actually Alan's first physical sale of this. You want to explain to them? I believe you said this was like print to order, right?
Yeah.
Something so, like that. You want to explain that to them, and then we'll get into the actual book.
Okay, so one of the things that kind of changed the industry, changed the landscape for a lot of indie creators was when I first started. I started doing comic books without having an idea of how we was going to print these things. And this was also before comics was something that was read online in like how we do it today. But things like print on demand came about, which meant that you could do small runs. You didn't have to print 200 to 500 books, and you didn't have to sit on stock that you didn't think you could ever sell. So with print on demand came about, I was able to start to produce books. So as I said, I was doing this for about 18 years, and I think I have over 25 titles. But the main thing is,
so you've been holding out. You an asshole. You've been holding out. No, hold on, chat. I know we don't have a chat. This is a recording, but if y'all watching now, hold on. Now, Nigel has told us about Diary of Stray Dogs 1, Diary of Stray Dogs 2, and then there was another book you posted in some groups with the people in the swimsuits on the pool. This motherfucker ain't. Hey, we curse here. We grown. He's 49. I'm 41. So if you don't like swear words, that's on you. I can't help you. Whatever. But this motherfucker been holding out. Now you got 22 other titles. We ain't seen
in total, including these books, I probably have done about 22, because in the 18 years I've done a comic book, I've done at least one book a year, and there were some years I did 2 books. So there's like 5 Life and Death in Paradise. There's 5 of them. There's 5 Partiers books, and then there is about 2, 3, 4, about 5 Stray Dogs books, and there's some other books I did for various companies.
5 Stray Dogs books. But I see, y'all can't see the cursor, but I got the cursor on the number 2.
Yeah,
So I'm wondering where the other
so I
three
would
at? You holding out on us? Holding
so
out on
the
us, man.
so I would count the reason why I would say five, right? There's a book I did for Whiteacre called Critical Ops Task Force, and it's all in the same universe. So it was originally a Straight Oaks book, but it was just given another name to. And if you actually see the cover of that book, it actually says set in the universe of the Diary of Straight Oaks. So it's
Yeah. Kind of
considered
like
a Diary.
what's that movie? It's coming out, and you see this happen with quite a
Yeah,
few things, like what is it,
like
Ballerina or
yeah,
whatever? That's
yes,
John Wick.
set. Correct, correct,
What is it? Shaw and Hobbs was. I
correct.
don't know I don't know how they set that in the Fast and the Furious world, but okay,
Yeah,
so you
yeah,
do see that type of thing.
yeah,
So it's very common. What's not common is that we don't see those other 22 books here. I mean, y'all, once again, you can't see the cursor, but I got it right on the building above Ghost there. That's the one character I do recognize. It's space to put 2 or 3 books right there. You know what I'm saying? I'm just trying to shame him into talking about these other books because he's holding
yeah,
out all this
yeah,
experience and whatnot. But
yeah.
anyway,
So
man.
when I see somebody, so sometimes so one of the things that I used to give feedback to creators. I used to give feedback to creators. If you want to ever lose creator friends, start to give them feedback. So it's kind of stopped. But
Yeah.
I see a lot of people who could do a lot of things better because I made a lot of mistakes in my when it began. I'm not going to say that
Mhm.
my first set of books were perfect or they were beautiful or whatever. A lot of the early books, there's a lot of things that I wish I did different. The first
Yeah.
series I did, it was supposed to be eight, eight episodes, 8 issues. It was written, it was planned out, 8 issues. We did 5. Someday I may get back and finish the other 3. But
Yeah.
so then when I go on a podcast and I tell people, don't aim to do more than you can chew, where I'm speaking from experience. I'm telling you, well, why not start by trying to see if you could do 2 or 1 book, maybe
Yeah.
3. But and if that way you could kind of, there's nothing saying that if you do a superhero book and the arc is three issues that you have to stop, you could do another 3 and another 3 and another 3 versus doing a book that's 12 issues and you're asking, so where's this going? The person is saying, I've met creators who they haven't finished the first book yet, and I'm asking, so where's this going? They say, yeah, I'm thinking about, I wrote 12 issues already, and this is what I'm saying. 12 issues? Do you know that if you are 40 and you've written 12 issues and you can barely put out a book a year, you're gonna be doing this thing till you're like 55. And so people don't think, people don't think about that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
the amount of effort that goes into it. I mean, I think we mentioned last episode, like Alan Moore with The Watchmen, he pitched 12 and realized he did not have enough material. He had enough
yeah,
material for 6. And that's why The Watchmen, Alan Moore's The Watchmen, has a lot of bloat. And the advantage to when I read it, which was the mid 2000s, a lot of comic book fans were like, okay, it's a great story. Here's what you can skip past. Here's all of that filler stuff. You don't have to pay attention to this stuff. But when we were reading it back in the 80s, we read cover to cover. And so it's like it helped us understand the world. But for you, the modern reader, the new reader, you can bypass all of this. And here's the actual story.
yeah. And
So
something
go ahead.
that you said there, right? I should never read an indie book and read it and then when I'm finished say, well, this is bloat or this is filler, because unlike the big 2, that is a lot of money and time that went into that production for me to kind of just feel as though I didn't do anything. Every time I read an indie book, I should feel some kind of impact. I should kind of feel like, wow, I can't wait to read the next one. Or like, sometimes like when you watch something, a movie, and it leaves you kind of disturbed or it leaves you thinking. That's how you know when you've kind of read something that's good. Even if you don't it can either be a book that you say, you know what, I enjoyed that book, but I do not want to read it again. You know what I mean? Like I remember like when I watched Black Hawk Down, I wasn't grossed out by anything about it, but it was so emotionally exhausting. I didn't want. I've never brought myself back to watching it again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So which means it does have an impact on me. So I think that each book should have some kind of impact, even if the person hates the book. A person hating a book is better, in my opinion, than a person saying, "Yeah, it was all right," and
You
that's
have
you know
like
what I mean.
no, you're indifferent towards it. Like
Yeah,
I would rather you hate the book because at least it invoked some feeling than
correct.
for you just to be indifferent. Like, oh man, did you read this? Yeah, I read it. It is what it is. I mean, and that's something kind of like what I tell my sisters is like it's kind of like the different like what is it I tell them? Uh, I'd rather have you respect me than to like me
Mm,
because people can like somebody, right, and still not give a damn about them. Like, oh yeah, I like him, but you got to go fuck him up. Go do what you're gonna do. But if you respect me, you're least likely to try me. What I'm
yeah.
saying, like you'll understand what it is, and it's kind of something similar to that. Like with the book, I'd either like I'm like you, like or even a movie like Malcolm X and Rosewood. Those are movies. Well, Rosewood is definitely a movie. I'd be like, I can't have that on my watch list. If you know the story of Rosewood,
Mhm.
that movie, even to this day, I'm 41 years old. I saw it when in the 90s. I mean, I wasn't even 16 years old because I didn't turn 16 until May 4th, 2000. Uh, I watched that movie. I'd have to go sit in my room and be quiet for a minute because it would just make me so mad when you
Mm,
look at how we were treated, how when you look at that town, only for them to admit in the end, and obviously there's probably some embellishing or whatever, you know, but when you look at and for them to admit, like, we knew your wife was a hoe, that type of thing,
mm,
it just makes me mad. Same with Malcolm X, like my first time hearing Sam Cooke, Change Gonna Come, and the way that Spike Lee masterfully put that song there, and even to this day, and then just Denzel Washington playing Malcolm X, he looks so much like him that I thought that's what Malcolm X looked like. And
mm.
so
Yeah,
movies should do that. I mean, even going back to what you said about In Game, a term my sister who was coming through the door taught me, musical inflection. Like
yeah,
when you see all of the little portals open and you hear the music rise, my sister's like, no, that's inflection. She's like, that's done intentionally to
yeah,
draw an
yeah.
emotional
Or
response.
emotional.
You know what I'm
It
saying?
is. It is. It
And
is.
and
It
that's why
is.
that scene chokes you up, and that's why Captain America did not have to yell Avengers Assemble, because you're at the crescendo when he's like Avengers, and then the music goes flat, and he's like Assemble, and then everybody runs. I'm getting kind of choked up about it because that's what it
Yeah.
was designed to do.
I do. Yeah. Yeah.
That's exactly
Yeah.
what it was designed to do.
Yes,
Um,
very, very well. Those
I-
two movies are very well done. Infinity War, and so that's what we're trying to do. That's what your book should do. You shouldn't. Your book as an indie creator, you need to have points. Uh, where I always kind of say I need to have a book or a page in my book or a part of the book that is a oh shit, oh fuck moment. You know what I
yeah.
mean? I would talk
God
about
loves. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I would talk about book one to this, since it's the older book, and this there's a moment where the character gets killed in the kitchen, and that was you turn the page and he's killed as a splash page, and it's supposed to that's was done that you turn the page and you're surprised and you get that impact, and that's what I wanted. You want to have some kind of impact. You want somebody to say, "Oh shit," and then like when you kill the other character at the end of the book, you want people have hit me up and said, "Cha, you shouldn't have killed that character. Why did you have to kill that character?" And that's what I wanted to hear. I wanted
Yeah.
you to be. I wanted to, even if you don't agree, or people say, "Gee, man, I really didn't want," and that's what you want. You want to have some kind of thing. You don't want there are too many books that you read them and you're like, okay, this was okay. You know, okay, it's just not.
Okay,
It's not really.
okay is not okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
you kind of want to be like that one girlfriend, like, oh, it was just okay. Yeah, it was okay. Really, just okay. Like,
yeah.
what am I supposed to feel here?
Yeah.
I'll give you before we're gonna go ahead and get it. But to your point, I know I mentioned Endgame and I mentioned Malcolm X, which obviously y'all go watch those films. I mean, to me, Malcolm X is Spike Lee's magnum opus. I don't think he's ever made a film better than that one. He's
Mhm.
never been able to top that. But a book that you all should read, and I read it in 2011, and it's the reason why it is one of my favorite stories of all time. Is God Loves, Man Kills. X-Men 2 is loosely based on that. But
Yeah.
God Loves, Man Kills. Now imagine I'm reading this story around 2011, 2012. I can't remember which year, but we got Trayvon Martin and whatnot that happened. God Loves, Man Kills opens up, and it's not about race, but it opens up with two black kids running from a mob. They're mutants. And the mob is made up of white and black people. The artist did an amazing job in that book. Um, uh, but they're killed at a playground, and you see Magneto's reaction, but it was just the opening of these two black children running for their life. They hadn't done anything but be born with these powers, and it hits home with you just what it means to be a mutant in the Marvel landscape. And then, if you're a fan of Marvel and DC and you start to think like in the DC universe, people with powers are loved. There is no, like, I think there are like some hate groups, but nothing
Up
like
on the
what
scale of Marvel. Yeah.
yeah, and then you start to ask yourself the questions like, like as Guardians, they live to fight, whereas mutants, they fight to live, and that really brings it home. And then you get to the end of the book, and one of the uh main antagonists, because it's like a radio wave or something that goes off, and it basically pings mutants. And one of the people that hated mutants basically found out it pinged her. And just the look on her face, I think, what did Claremont tell me? I think she falls off the stage and breaks her neck or something, or he shoots somebody. I think she gets shot, but it was like that look where she's like, oh no, this thing pinged me. I'm a mutant. And how that messes with your head, the very thing that you've hated, you yourself are, and so, like you said, just those inflection points, it should evoke some emotion. I remember Sensational Spider-Man in the mid 2000s had like a little backup story, and it was this homeless girl. She lived in a box, and she would see Spider-Man swinging, and in the box were a bunch of pictures of Spider-Man. And in the end of this little backup story, she passes away in the hospital, and Peter's there, like Spider-Man's there, and he's basically like, I didn't know, you know. And it was like, damn, it got you right in the feels, what I'm saying? And it just lets you
Mhm.
know that as a hero, Spider-Man does his best, but even he can't be everywhere. There's somebody that he's going to miss. And
Yeah.
that is some stuff that Marvel used to do that I missed that they did. A lot of things now we know that they're held back by the MCU. It's no longer, it's just more like, it's more of a curse than it is a blessing to a degree with some characters. And but because we've gone on long enough. We've been holding off the main event. This is not the Mike Tyson Jake Paul thing, but this is something better. This is a better fight. We've got Nigel versus his own story, which it's not really a versus. I'm just talking it up. So tell us first and foremost who we see on the cover here,
All right.
from left to right.
Left to right. Okay, so from left to right, we see that's a character called Gaz, another character called Cowboy, the main character Shani, and Clock, which is her right hand man.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Okay.
these
And
are
who
the.
and who did, I was gonna say,
Yep.
who did the cover?
The cover was done by Juan Carlos, the person who actually did the interiors also.
Okay. All right,
Yeah,
so
I
just let me
designed
know.
this cover. Actually, that's one of the covers I actually designed. I actually sketched it out and I sent it to him, and he came back with this.
Yeah, and just much like with the first issue, I love the use of color.
Mm,
Really hyping up like that cyberpunk aesthetic there.
yeah.
All right. Even right here, I love the use of the gradients. Wow, there's a lot more people that helped produce this book than the last one. But as you said, it's also a much bigger project. What page you want me to go to? The first one?
Yeah, you can go to the first part. All right. So this was a piece that was done by an artist, Michael Jordan Johnson. Uh, he's a great artist, but he was very difficult to work with. Um, I won't go down there, but he kind of taught me a lot about working in this indie space, because sometimes you are fortunate enough to meet a lot of people who are that you get along with, but you will meet some people that things don't kind of work out. But
Yeah.
but I kind of really love his artwork. He did a great job on this.
Okay. Let's see. This is. I remember reading this, and so this is some creed that she has, and I think this is partly what inspired me to ask you last episode about like that island influence, and I just imagine once again, you guys can't see my cursor, but I am kind of just going over it, and kind of made me think like, is this something that you just made up for the series, or is this like something inspired by
No,
actual
no, I made it up for the
Barbados
series.
culture?
No, made it up for
Okay.
the series. So what I did was kind of borrow from. Okay, so her crew is called the Maroons in the book, and the Maroons were the runaway slaves in Jamaica and Haiti. Um, so they were the slaves who kind of got away, and they formed rebellions, and they were called the Maroons. So the Jamaicans, they actually have them on their money. So I wanted to kind of use that. If you had a mercenary group, they would be called the Maroons. So that's where I kind of put that bit of Caribbean influence there. So the name Maroons is a Caribbean heritage kind of thing from Jamaica and Haiti. And the character has Jamaican and Haitian heritage. So that's where
Okay.
that came from.
Okay.
And yeah. And we as Caribbean islands and most countries, uh, coming off the British, but a coat of arms is a very big part of our money and our flag and that kind of stuff. So I wanted her to have a coat of arms.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right. Let's.
yeah. So
So
this
this is
is
the
yeah. So this
first
is the
official page.
yeah. So this is the first official page, and this is kind of like the catalyst to start off the story. And this was the initial start of the story. What had happened was, and this is where having a good editor can come in. The story started about 3 or 4 pages down. When the main character, who's the character coming for help, lost his children, and he wanted to hire the mercenaries to get them back. And all of this stuff was supposed to be a flashback. But the issue with a flashback, there's no tension in a flashback, because whoever you see telling the story, they've survived the flashback. So
Mhm.
he kind of told me that I had to kind of finish the script and everything. And he was like, yeah, I like this and stuff, but I think there's no tension with the flashback. And he kind of said, uh, you need to kind of start the story a little faster. And he kind of gave me some suggestions, and and at that time I used to write with a writing partner. So we kind of went back and I sat down, and they were kind of against it. But I said no. So what I would do, and what I would advise any person, if you have a editor, you take what they say as a suggestion. You don't fight it. There are certain things that you will kind of stick out your guns for, but think on it and try to see if you can make it work. Because somewhere in the middle, you will find the answer to it. So some of the things he suggested didn't work. But rearranging the story where it ran in real time versus being a flashback, that worked. So, but you don't have to act on something immediately. And sometimes it's good to step away from your project for a bit. So between the editing and the writing, I would usually send my stuff to the editor. When I get it back, I would be nervous to open the edits. And then a day I would sit and I'd read them. And sometimes I would say, well, that wasn't too bad. And I'd either talk to the editor or I would start to try to see if I can make those changes that they suggested and it doesn't break the vision or the idea that I had. So the editor, this part, starting from this point, is thanks to the editor.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead and go to the next page real quick, or just let me know when you want me to stop.
Yeah. So these are just these pages are just basically these would be the inciting incident, and these would be things that would basically get the story moving, world building, kind of showing the backgrounds, that kind of stuff, to kind of get you into the story. The science fiction aspect, the woman there has a augmented arm, so you kind of start to know these things without kind of saying them out loud and saying, yeah, this is a science fiction. You should be able to pick up the cues. This world is a slightly different world from the world that we exist in, even down to the how their suits without the collars and that kind of stuff. Slight nods that we're dealing with a science fiction book.
All right. Oh yeah. Let's see here.
Yeah.
Just let me know when to stop. And
Yeah,
I
so
agree with that. I mean, and you do a good job of establishing that early on too. So,
yeah. So this one was So this was the kids of the major characters that we just saw, and one of the things was with these kids being the focal point of the story, you had to give them a personality in a short space of time. You had to be able to feel that I remember when I gave someone a preview of it and they said, I really hate two of these kids. And I was like, great. At least therefore you have some kind of feeling for them in terms of, oh, I really don't like these two. And then there's another one, so, well, yeah, these other two are good. So that was the intention. So you have a short period of time to kind of nail it with the characters' personalities. And that's something that's very important. You have to have personality with the characters. Characters have to be able to speak to the audience as quick as possible, good or bad. And you gotta hope that it kind of, and you could kind of see it here with just the body language of the characters, without reading the words, the kind of personality. You have someone who kind of pressy, kind of, about the attention and that kind of stuff. So it's a lot to do with.
Yeah, I mean, it helps difference. Nobody wants to see a bunch of characters and they all act. What is it? Is homogenous the word I want to use? Probably not, but and they all pretty much act the same way. I mean, you can tell a lot through body language. I mean, most communication is nonverbal to begin with, so that could help a lot. Yeah. All right, let's move on. So just let me know when you want me to stop.
You can just flick through, flip it, yeah, right, right. So stop. You can go back there a minute. So I remember we had a discussion. You was talking, you was discussing and one of the things you kind of brought up was you wanted to see more of these villains. I remember you was telling me about that.
Yeah.
So this is one of the villains that was introduced, but he's kind of done kind of sneakily. I don't know if you picked up that he is the villain that was later on in the book.
No, I didn't. I didn't notice it. Now that I see it, I'm like, he's the one. He's the one that gets killed, right?
Yeah, he's the one that got killed.
Yeah, and he was the main reason for me saying that. Is like you read and there's three people, but it's like by the time you meet him, it's he's gone, and I'm like did you really kind of need him, you know? And that happens in a lot of different stories, where it's
Right.
like, oh, okay, you talked up this guy, and then like he's dead 30 seconds later. Which, by the way, in movies, you all probably don't notice, but 30 seconds of screen time is a lot. It's short, but it's a lot. Like, if you guys ever go and find it, you can actually go and look up, like with Infinity War, how long each character was actually on screen, and you'll be surprised, but it'll feel like you saw them for a
Mhm.
vast amount of time. Like, nobody has more screen time in that movie than Robert Downey Jr. He's the only person at like almost 30 minutes, but Idris Elba is in there for like 30 seconds.
Yeah,
But your mind doesn't process it that way. Your mind
correct.
processes the whole scene, and you, even if you don't see them, you still feel like they're there.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
but no, I did
So
not pick up that he was the bad guy. I didn't even
yeah,
notice him, to be honest.
right. So he's a bad guy, and so he does have a role, and his role was to give the kids this technology, and this technology is his technology. He's the person who came up with it. So there was a reason why he was dispatched quickly, because it was a bit to do with it being comedic. And when you deal with a lot of characters, you're kind of dealing with a lot of bloat, and you have to kind of find a space for them. Especially like what you just said with a movie where you have an ensemble cast, you have to give them some type of screen time so that a person knows they're there. But there's not everyone that you could you could use or deal with. If you understand what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah, I like
Uh,
the appearances to have meaning. Like, me and my sister, we were just talking about it was a movie, and like Jamie Foxx is in it, and he's like heavily featured on like the cover and the
trailer.
promotion material.
Yes.
Yeah, in the
Stealth.
trailer. Oh, no, not stuff. This is a lower budget movie.
Oh.
Um, yeah, a lower budget movie. I say he did it as a favor to somebody.
Mm,
Um, but he's in like 5 minutes of this movie early on, and it's like, okay, you know, I
yeah.
I, I kind of just kind of like Brad Pitt in 12 Years a Slave. He's in like the last 12 minutes of the movie, but
Yeah.
he's heavily featured in like promotional stuff. Like, he's the selling point, and it's like
Yeah.
another movie like that is like Romeo Must Die. I remember when that came out, everybody's like, yeah, DMX is advertised in the movie, but he's only in the movie for like 2 scenes, you
Yeah.
know. But you heavily feature them in promotional trailers and things like that. So it seems like you had this guy kind of done the same way. Like, um,
Yeah, but he's a pivotal. He's a pivotal, but he has a plot point of these
yeah,
stories. So I try not to create characters that don't need to be, but at the same time, for budgetary reasons, this, what else you gonna do with the character, kind of thing. The
yeah,
idea was, do we ever kind of write stories? He was supposed to die the same way, but the setup was different. So when I first did it, it was in a bar. But as I said, like, I can write a plot, but the settings can always kind of change. So that's how it kind of went.
okay,
So to
let's
go
see.
forward, I haven't looked at this in a while, right? So
Yeah.
this is the
I mean, if
kids.
you want, because I mean, we are kind of running long. We could do a couple more pages and then
Yeah,
maybe pick up in another episode. Is that cool? You want to get to like, I don't know, let's say, because you said this is like 60 pages.
yeah,
Want to get to like maybe page 25 or 30, about halfway through, and then we could pick up next episode and finish it off.
yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. We could actually jump ahead a bit. I could move. Yeah, so let me jump ahead a few pages.
Oh,
I'll just go to the.
you want to describe what's happening here real quick, because this is important.
Yeah. So this is the idea of the children's consciousness being kidnapped. So I wanted to do something, instead of like a physical kidnapping, the kids were their consciousness is taken from them. So it's like the essence or who they are, their brain waves, however you want to kind of look at it,
Yeah,
and they're all put into a coma. So
yeah,
that's kind of the that's what kicks off the story.
yeah.
And
And one thing, yeah, and one thing
mm,
as I look at it now, because it's also been a while since I read it, um, each of the children, there's 5 children, and you see it's taking from them in a different way, leaving different distorted expressions. Brother,
Yeah,
young brother at the end, I'm like, bro, what is he taking from you that's got you looking that mad, bro? Because these
yeah.
kids are what? None of these kids are like over the age of like 14, right?
I think like yeah. Let's say I think there's a set that's kind of teenagers. Like I kind of go on a policy of if I don't have to nail down something, I don't because that's kind of what kind of gets you in trouble. But we know that the kids, there's a set that's young and there's another set that are teenagers.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
how old they are, yeah, I know about 14 to say 18, 17. I never really kind of nailed
Oh,
on that part because it wasn't,
yeah, as you mentioned, I kind of said it's like the first 3 are probably like are closer to that 18 range, and then the 2 at the end are probably closer to that 13 to 14.
yeah, or
It
maybe
looks like.
even less. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Still, brother at the end, like, bro, what is going on that's got you that mad, bro? He
yeah.
look like he
So that was, yes. So
um
that's what that was kind of the direction that I kind of give. Let's give them different expressions. Somebody's happy, somebody's terrified, somebody's, how they kind of feel about the as you said, what the emotion that they're going through.
okay.
Uh, yeah,
Okay, sorry, we'll go ahead and
yeah.
so now we got
So this page, we got this page, and this is the reintroduction of the main protagonist from book one. It's the first time you see the character, and what I had liked about this, is that when I introduced, and there's another page, you can turn. When I introduced that one, go back again. Sorry. When I someone said this, it was like I thought he died in book one, and they had the exact kind of they had that the same kind of shock that I actually wanted them to have because when you turn the page, he reveal that he's there, he's alive, and but then the reveal is that it's a dream and he's dead and that kind of stuff. So I want to play into the fact of regret and that this thing kind of haunts because when I did book one and I did book two, I didn't want to just brush over the fact that a character that she was in love with died and then she just recovered. You know what I mean?
yeah.
I wanted that it had it tied into the next story. It could go forward a bit.
Yeah. So I mean, she's still dealing with grief. I mean, I don't
Correct.
know.
Yeah.
I can't think right off the top of my head which stage because there's 5 stages of grief. Which one it is, but obviously it's still something that bothers her. And like you said, that tends to not tends to, but it does still leave like a emotional impact for that first issue. It almost makes you want to go look to see what happened, at
Yeah.
least in my
So
opinion.
yeah, so this is her in the Caribbean. She started a mercenary group, and I wanted to do a lot of storytelling, foreshadowing. So there's a character here on the Gaz character. She's there on the screen, and that's a little bit of a foreshadowing to kind of foreshadow something that happens later on in the book. Because and if you read the story and that kind of stuff, you would kind of understand what I mean. You could go for it again, a couple of pages or so, right? So I kind of love
You want me
this
to stop
page.
here? Or you want me to go
You could go
further?
for it. You can go for it. I'll tell you where to start. And this page this is my Caribbean page. Yeah, and you got this is also in the Caribbean. The kids here.
Isn't the bottom panel important? Isn't that like one of the villains that's
Yeah,
introduced?
yeah, that's one of the villains that are introduced. And
Because this couple is important.
yeah, they're the couple from the beginning of the book. And it's their kids that have been kidnapped. So they kind of heard these, and the whole thing ties into the fact that she is family to the guy who died in book one. And that's something that the editor also kind of added because when you have a protagonist, they have to have some kind of emotional tie to the story. And sometimes if you keep doing a lot of stories, it's very hard to do. You remember back in the 80s, and you had a movie and it was a kung fu movie or something. And part one was the guy comes back to town because somebody killed his master. Then part two would
Mhm.
have to be somebody came out of town because somebody killed his girlfriend. It always had to come up with this excuse or reason for the character to have some kind of emotional attachment constantly. So that's one of the things as a writer, you have to try to come up with ways to make the protagonist's story emotionally invested. It doesn't have to happen all the time, but sometimes it works best for and then the other level sometimes which I'm realizing is that you put a lot of these little things into a story and a lot of people don't even notice it, or it doesn't mean anything, or they don't understand, well, okay, well, that's why this feels a little different. So so sometimes you wonder, well, did I really need to do all this kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you can't fault people for what they really don't know what to perceive. I mean, everybody isn't always attuned to those types of things. I mean, I've definitely missed things, but this scene, I'm like, okay, yeah, you got to give a reason for it. Was Shawnee to actually care? Like,
Correct.
especially, and I think what was one of the things was like it was also the amount of money that was being offered is like a little bit lower than what they're used to taking, and so it's like, what? Why do I need to do this for this, sum of
Yeah.
money? And that tie that binds is like so and so sister, because Shawnee does talk about how like they weren't particularly close or anything of that nature.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
all right, I'm gonna go ahead and go forward because we got to get closer to wrapping this episode up.
Oh,
Just let me
yeah.
know when to
So
stop
so
because I know
go
it's
for it
getting late.
again.
I know it's getting late. I know it's getting late where you're at.
Yeah, so go forward. This is the crew, go forward. And this is
So right,
basically you introducing some of the characters here. And then something I want to do is give each character their own voice, have that internal conflict between the characters. So everybody's, you kind of root for certain people, or you want to, you like certain people because of the way how they are, the dialogue. Try to make different characters quirky, some characters smart, different things like that. And we go forward again.
yeah, and that's important. I mean, because you wanna like
So,
or hate certain people. You once again just adding depth to the character. If everybody's the same, like what is it, Agent Smith, and it's like, okay, you shot one, but we got like 200 Agent Smiths, so it's like, why do I care? You
so
know.
there's a
So,
yeah. So there's a
yeah,
there's a panel on this page that was done. It was done. It was done. Let's say by accident. In terms of it was just drawn. But then when I looked at it, so there's the panel where they're all at the table. It's kind of
mhm.
reminiscent of. You ever seen the painting of the Last Supper?
Yeah,
Yeah, so it kind of has that kind of vibe. And when we kind of realized that it was like that, me and the artist kind of laughed. I said, well, yeah, that wasn't intentional, but it is kind of like their Last Supper, if you kind of understand how the story kind of goes. So that's
yeah.
kind of it's kind of funny. Yeah. So then the
This is
next
one of
page.
this is one of those moments that if this was a movie, you would harken back at the end to this one panel. It's like
Yeah.
the last time they were all together,
Yeah.
kind of like I don't think they did it in Stand By Me. No, I think they did. No,
I think it
Stand
did.
Stand By Me.
It
No,
did.
I think Stand By Me. Just at the end, it's all of them walking home, and then each one slowly disappears as you find out what happens to them. Something like that.
Yeah. So we could stop here. But this last page, this last panel, with them getting ready and then the bottom, this was taken from a book. I don't know if you ever watched a western called The Well Bunch.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, so basically, some American soldiers go into Mexico, and basically at one point in time, after they're tired of drinking and whoring and that kind of stuff, they kind of just say, "Well, we've had enough," and they're going to kill the general, and they just kind of form that kind of. We kind of see that kind of superhero lineup. You've seen it in like Civil War, where you see all the heroes coming forward, with one guy in the front as a leader and the rest, that kind of thing. So that was kind of taken from that kind of thing.
Yeah, you
So
see it in Civil War, you see it in Endgame, you see it
yeah,
I think you see something similar to this in the Magnificent Seven too, and the Seven
Yes,
Samurai.
yes. Magnificent Seven. That's the kind of thing.
Magnificent Seven. Magnificent Seven is just the Western version of Seven Samurai. That's
Yep.
literally what it is, and
Yep.
that's probably what this scene is more reminiscent of. Let's see real quick what the next page is. Okay, you know what? I was trying to see if we had like one of those good splash pages, but that seems like a good page to like end this on, and then we could pick up. For anybody wondering, if you have the digital version, this is like page 23. I'm not sure if that's what it translates to in the book. It may also be page 23. You know, something that people I don't think pay attention to, but old school comics used to have page numbers to help you find. You know, I don't think they really do that too much now.
No, we don't do it now.
Yeah.
Editors ask for it all the time, but we don't tend to do it.
Yeah.
Editors prefer to see numbers.
Yeah. I mean, I miss when editors used to put editor's notes so that you understood how a character got from point A to point B. That's something that I miss. Like, what is it? Kitty Pryde's first appearance. Like Spider-Man is there. He's only there for like the first 2 or 3 pages, but they explain to you like how he got to that point because these characters all interacted, and it's like, oh yeah, you got to go see like Marvel team up so and so to see how he got here, even though he's not really featured in that book anymore. But so we hitting the 2-hour mark, man. This was fun. It didn't really feel like 2 hours passed. Hopefully anybody who watches this is, entertained and learned something and enjoyed it. And, we'll be back next week. Sound good to you, man?
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. Well, we're going to sign off with that. Y'all take it easy. Be blessed.
Okay, man.
Yeah.